Hi everybody, it's Mandy Gibbons here, and I'm here with Leah from Build A Brother, and we're super excited to be chatting with her today and having a conversation about men's mental health and also dealing with suicide. So Leah, I would love to get you to open up, if you wouldn't mind, and just sort of tell us a little bit about your story, so that then we can sort of work into how Build A Brother actually came about.
Yep. Well, I've worked in the welfare field for most of my life, and my last position as a drug and alcohol worker for about 10 years, I dealt with mostly men.
Yes.
And back then I realised that there wasn't much support for men. But at the time I was working full-time plus running my own business, so I didn't have time to do much about it. But I did realise that there was a shortage for men's support. So then back in 2018, Peta, who's the other member, she lost her brother. He killed himself. He came back from Afghanistan, a changed man, young man, and he killed himself. And so she wanted to do something to help men's mental health. And then I was in the position where I could give more time and I could do something. I had a lot of back issues, and so I had to stop working. And so that's when we formed Build A Brotherhood. That's how it all started, basically. From the death of her brother and me working with men and realising that they needed support, but I just didn't have the time. Then I had the time, and that's how we started it. So we just sort of thought, well, I've always had this sort of saying in my head, if you do something and it's going to be beneficial, people will come. If they don't come, well, then, you haven't really lost much. But men kept coming. We started at a local park, actually. And then we realised more men were coming and that we'd need shelter. And so that's how we had a meeting with the men's shed, and, then sort of came under them. So run it at the men's shed. So that's how it started. So it started just with her and I thinking, well, there has to be something more out there for men, and what can we do? And it's sort of grown from then, and from talking to men and seeing what they need and what they want and the topics that they talk about and all that sort of stuff. That's then made us think about different workshops and things like that to run to help them. So that's how it all really started.
And it's like watching your Facebook page, especially, like it's so supportive on there, isn't it? Like when people were sharing their stories, because there's like guys on there, and I'm gathering they sort of like contact you guys post their stories on there, and then people absolutely throw their most incredible support behind these guys. And I thought, this is so fantastic. I love this so much.
It's because it's so real, I think. They're real stories from real men, and they're men's stories from all across all avenues, cultures, different walks of life, and from all around the world. And we don't sift through the stories and say, oh yes, we like his story better than his. All stories to us are important. And so anyone that is brave enough to send us a story, we will put it up on the page, because we all come from different walks of life, and we know that people can get different things from different people's stories.
And and they're so heartfelt. Like when these guys are sharing these stories, it's not like just kind of a bit of fluffy stuff went through a bad time. It's like deep emotional. They're really sharing from their soul, right? It's such a beautiful thing to see that.
Yes, that's right, correct. And that's why it can help so many other people, because we don't just talk about, pardon me, the surface stuff. We talk about the real stuff, the real stuff that gets people down every day, the real stuff that drives people to think to themselves they don't want to live anymore. That's the stuff we really talk about, and that's the stuff that when we do run the men's support groups, that men will talk about. They come with their deepest, darkest secrets, their deepest, darkest problems, feelings. They're not shut down. They've got a free space to open up and talk. And I know that's rare, because I've worked in the field, so I know that's rare to find. Whereas that's what we want. We want people to be open and raw, and at the same time making sure that they're supported with the right contacts and psychologists and psychiatrists and all that sort of stuff.
Yes.
So that, you know, everyone can stay safe.
Absolutely. And, you know, when you were going through that experience with Peter's brother, like, how did, you know, and him committing suicide, like, how did that affect you guys, you know, and, you know, family members and so forth? Because,
yeah, it was terrible. It was really hard. There's a lot of guilt and shame that goes with that, because everyone says, well, we should have picked it up, we should have done more. You know, why didn't we say something? Why didn't we have him round more often?
Yeah.
That's all part of the grieving process.
Yes.
And you know, the grieving process goes on for years. It just doesn't go on for a few months. So that's all been part of it. But a big part of it, again, like any other trauma, is to talk about it, to have the special anniversary days where, you know, you devote that time to him. Yes. Peter's got a special tree where she's marked his name into it, and she'll go on a nature walk and go and visit that and talk to him, and you know, take a plant or flowers or whatever. But at the end of the day, it's realising too that shame and guilt that behind that, he also didn't ask for help. He didn't go and get help. He was very good at covering it up, which a lot of people are who are suicidal. That's why we put a lot of posts on the page about wearing masks, different masks. So men have learned over generations of wearing those masks and pretending that everything's fine. Well, he was the same. Like, he didn't, although we saw glimpses of things that were going on, he still didn't come for help, or he didn't say anything, and so that makes it very difficult too. So at times it's a you know, it's a complex web of emotions, because you do feel the guilt and the shame of not doing enough, but with retrospect, you also know that if no one's telling you that they're not in a good place, that is also very difficult, because in order for things to change, people have to be in a certain place to hear new information and to get help too.
And so, to be okay with feeling, be okay with being vulnerable enough to ask for help.
Because asking for help and talking to someone, it takes real courage.
Yes, it does.
It takes a lot of strength and courage to be vulnerable and to say what's really going on.
And that's not only that too, you also then, when you're telling someone, you're really facing it truthfully for yourself at the same time. It's like this huge amount of awareness around it, right?
And it makes it real too, because often when something's going on in your head, you don't really hear it. You don't hear it for the first time until you verbalise it. And that's why counselling is very good, because sometimes it's the first safe place that you've ever been to where you actually hear yourself say something that has been going on for a long time, but it's the first time you've actually heard it, because before that, it's just been, I call it monkey chatter in the back of your brain, going round and round and round and round, and you haven't really realised it. So that's why we promote on the men's page that is so important to talk, because that's the reason, because a lot of the time it's not until you actually hear yourself say something that the penny drops and you think, wow, I didn't realise I was thinking that, or that it was as bad as that, or whatever. And that's the first point of change. And I think too, knowing, like having resources like yours where they can actually go there, even if they're maybe not at that point of being suicidal, but like feeling like something's just not right, or just feeling really troubled, knowing that they've got that, because, you know, being able to nip it in the bud sounds a bit like, you know, blasé type thing, but, you know, to be able to get to someone before they get to that point, like a prevention, so to speak, is so important, and allowing them to have that openness to be able to share that with you, so that then they can go, look, I don't really know what I'm feeling, but this is a lot of men don't really know. because of, again, this generation this cycle that we have where men just feel they have to keep going. So they're not taught and they're not good at connecting their emotions to a word.
Yes.
And so we discuss all that, and we use the emotional wheel, which gives you an array of different emotions.
Yeah.
And a lot of times when men first come to the group, they won't say anything. And we say that at the beginning, that's fine, that you don't have to talk.
Yes.
We know that for them to have got out of their car and walked in the front door is one of the hardest things that they may have ever had to do.
Yes.
And men have spoken about that. Men have come and not got out of their car, driven off, come back a different time, then got out of their car, but then still not have come in, taken off. So we know how much courage it takes to come to something like what we run.
Yes.
And we make it quite clear that if they just want to come and listen to people's stories, that's fine too, if that's what makes them feel safe.
Yes.
But what ultimately happens is that there hasn't been many men that have come more than once that haven't spoken, because it's such a safe place and people and the men feel so supported. And often they feel for the first time that they're not alone, because they hear everyone else's stories and they think, oh, I feel like that, I feel like that. And it really doesn't take long before they do want to talk, because that's what's happening. You know, when you've got stuff going on, you do want to talk. You do want to be in a place where you feel safe and that you feel heard.
Yes.
So we talk about all that, about the fear of, you know, opening up and how it's not easy, and how men have been culture has taught men not to talk about how they feel, and often men they don't talk about how they're feeling, they'll talk about an actual incident or what's going on from a logical perspective.
Yes, yes.
Because that's, again, how they've been trained to process things. So I do a lot of work on connecting them to the logic, to the feeling.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's what I spend a lot of time doing, to connect the two, because that's when you can get healing. When you can connect the two, you can then sit with the feelings, honour those feelings, be kind to yourself, and that's how you then get through things and move on. It's when we separate them and push them away that we get stuck.
Yeah, it's true. And being able to have self-compassion for yourself is a really, really powerful thing when you're going through challenging times, right? And especially for men, because I use a term like they don't want to be the white knight that's fallen off the horse, right? They feel like they've got to be up there for everyone, handling, you know, not letting anyone, because they feel like they don't want anyone seeing them losing their shit, when it's not really losing their shit at all. Do you know what I mean? But that's how they feel. And so it's such a struggle for them to open up and share. And I love hearing this so much. I'm so passionate about this. This is so fantastic. And I totally got what you said. I was just about to say, I wonder how many guys sit out in the car park, you know, and don't come in maybe for the first time, or come back and forth, drive around the corner a few times or something, you know, because it is such a big deal. And having that safe place and hearing that they're not alone, that they're not the only one, because, you know, whenever we're going through, you know, times of struggle, right, all humans, we always feel like we're the only person on the planet that's going through this or feeling like this. And it's just such an incredible gift to be able to give men to have that safe place.
Yeah. And we also have a group of men inside the group that come regularly, that they've set up like a separate group on Messenger, so that they can, so if you come to the group, you can be part of that group. So then you've got someone that will text you all the time if you need that, you know, there'll be someone that can have a chat with you.
Yes.
And these group of men that have been coming regularly since the beginning, so that's, you know, just coming on just over 2 years now, most of them have, through their own doing, have ended up reaching out to a psychologist. So they all came not seeing a professional.
Yes.
And through not through me telling them that they should, but just realising that will be helpful for them, and another avenue a lot of them have reached out and found psychologists. And of course, we connect people to psychologists that we hear are good and all that sort of, which is also can be quite difficult to find. And then they're proud to come along to the groups and name that and say that, you know, when we first came to the group, we didn't, you know, some of them had seen psychologists and had terrible experiences and never wanted to go back and thought they were hopeless. But then when they found someone that they could talk to they will now promote that in the group as the long-term standing people who have been attending it. They're quite happy to have those conversations about how finding someone that you can talk to is important and how beneficial it can be. So that's also good, that because a lot of men do have negative experiences with professionals.
Yes, they absolutely do. I know, you know, men that have that I've coached and that have, you know, phoned me up for bad inquiries. Even they've told me their, you know, some of the terrible experiences that they've had, and I've just really felt for them, because then they've decided, well, I'm just not going to go there anymore. And it's only been usually through one of, you know, my clients that have said, just give Mandy a call, even just for the hell of it, just you know, so you've just got someone to talk to today, you know what I mean? And so, you know, I mean, I've always got, my phone is always open, if that makes sense. Door's always open, but I think that's so incredible, the way that you encourage men to communicate with each other, right? Because not a lot of men have an inner circle or guys that they can actually speak with, because quite often when guys, you know, they'll say they're going through a rough time, oh, have another beer, mate, you'll be all right. That type of thing.
Yep, for sure. And they haven't been taught how to have those conversations. And also they haven't been taught. It's not just men. As a society, we're not taught this stuff. I mean, it's not taught in schools. I mean, my aim is to have this sort of stuff taught in schools. Healthy communication skills, healthy listening skills, how you look after yourself, good self-care techniques. These are paramount to our living. If you don't have emotional intelligence, you don't get very far. You can be very intellectual, but if you don't know how to look after yourself emotionally,
yes, it's so true,
you won't get very far. Because that's better and more healthy than any intelligence that there is, because humans also need connection. They need a sense of belonging. And if you haven't got insight into yourself and your own behaviour, that is going to be very hard for you to connect with people. So we discuss all that sort of stuff too, what it looks like that if a mate did come to you, what would they need to hear from you? Because a lot of men just shut down and say, I haven't got a clue what to say. If a mate did come and say, I've got problems, I don't know what to say. And so a lot of the time they might avoid the conversations. Like they might know that their mate split up with a partner, and they don't address that because they think, well, if he does start crying or saying something, I've got no idea what to do, and it'll freak me out. So we just talk about other things, which of course isn't then helping their mate. So we talk all about that, about, you know, listening, reflective listening, asking open-ended questions, and not being stressed out and thinking like you have to be the person that sorts out everyone's problems, but just to be. And another thing that a lot of people, not just men, across the board, when someone starts talking about an issue, someone will then say, oh, that's happened to me. Yep, that's happened to me. And then they start darting off on their own story, which in turn what's happened is shut that other person's emotions down. And they've lost the flow of the conversation. And then it gets lost. So often then they'll just shut up. They'll just think, there's no point in me saying anything because no one can hear me. And that's why a lot of people will say, I feel so lonely, because they might be surrounded with a lot of people, but people aren't listening to what they're saying, and they're feeling too nervous to talk about it because of how you often can be received. Yes.
And, you know, and it can even be times, I know, because I have been through that place of being suicidal myself. It was a few years ago now. And I even found people either didn't know what to, I hardly reached out to anyone because I was pretty much everyone's go-to person, right? That everyone else came to for help. So I I didn't really want to be that person. I wanted to sort of just think, well, I've got my shit together, I can just deal with this. You know what I mean? I can get myself out of this. But when I did ask friends if I could come over for coffee, I was a bit worried about myself and things like that. They were either too busy or didn't want to deal with it. And then if I did say something, they'd say, oh, for God's sake, Mandy, you're one of the strongest people I know. You'll be right. Or same as what you said, it was nearly like they were trying to one-up me with their story.
Yeah. Yep.
And so I would just like,
yep,
down. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I asked a question a few weeks ago at the group, and I said, who here in some time of their life has thought about taking their own life? And every single person put up their hand.
Yeah.
So again, that shows that it's very common that most of us at some point of our time in our life feel that way.
Yes.
And it's and you know, it's because of pain and wanting to stop the pain and the loneliness and the lack of connection, lack of sense of belonging, not knowing how to get out of certain problems.
Yes.
In life, you know, how to take those steps to get out of, you know, some people have huge financial debts and problems, and they just think, I don't have the answers how to deal with these everyday problems, so I will focus on not being here anymore because that's the only thing I can take control of.
Yes.
I don't know what else to do.
Yeah.
And so then they get fixated on thinking like that. So we talk about things like that, about how you take small steps when you're highly stressed, and you take control of one thing at a time, and those, you know, instead of lunging forward thinking like, you know, you have to solve every problem in one day, how it's a learning process and it takes time, and that we all need connection and we need to feel safe around people, and to look at the people that you're hanging around with. Are they good people? Are they not good people? When you leave being with them, do you feel more drained?
Yes.
Or do you feel uplifted? Are you the sort of person, because of your history, that you spend a lot of time, as you were saying, Mandy, fixing other people's problems and thinking like you have to be there for everyone, because life has taught you that that's how you're accepted and that's how you feel good about yourself.
Yes.
Then, of course, you don't learn about boundaries and self-care. So when that's no good either, because then your cup's always half empty.
Yeah.
Instead of being half full.
And how many people do that? Like,
very
common. Many people do that, right?
Very common. And it's very common with men, because they think that, you know, again, historically it's been taught that they always have to be there for their family. They have to be the strong ones. They have to be bringing the money, and they have to be able to sort out the problems. And men are just like women in that they've got emotions, and there's only so much that they can take in life. And if they haven't had a safe place to fall, which most men don't, there will come a time when they can't keep going. That's just how it is. We're humans, and we can't keep functioning unless we have a safe place to fall.
Yes, that's it. And I think, you know, and if they come home, you know, like they might be super stressed at work, they could have a lot of stuff, you know, just in general on their plate. And then if they don't feel safe at home, because they still feel like they have to be like that, then at home there is no rest, nothing for them.
That's right. That's right. And if they're not used to sitting down and talking about how they're feeling, which we know is more common than not, that they just keep pushing down those emotions and keep saying to themselves, oh, I've just got to keep going, I've just got to keep going. But then what happens is that you will start getting medical problems and suffering from medical issues, whether that's headaches, back problems, stomach problems, heart problems, bowel problems. It will manifest itself in some way, because it's your body screaming out saying you need to rest. You're not coping. You need help here. So if you're not, if your mind, if you can't get through that emotionally, your body will physically start to try to tell you something.
And when you're at that stage, you then become scared to stop, because you're worried about what will happen when you do stop, right?
Of course. And they've got, usually men have got such great responsibility that usually, even though these days women are working too, usually when kids are involved, the man is still the main bread income provider. So they just feel like they can't stop, like they just have to keep going and keep going and keep going. So the pressure is enormous.
Yes, yeah, that's right. Oh, I'm so stoked we're having this conversation today. This is so awesome. I could actually talk to you for hours, but I know we don't have a lot of time, but I'm just like, this is just incredible. And so when, you know, what sort of advice would you give to guys when they're sort of, they really want to, they want to talk to someone, they're not sure how, they've got, you know, they've heard of a group like yours, organization like yours, and they're going, well, I really want to go there. I'm not sure how I feel about it. Like, because for men, it's that feeling of weakness. Like they say they feel weak just for the point of wanting to talk to someone, or just for the sake that they feel like maybe they're feeling a little bit vulnerable when they really shouldn't be feeling like that. That's the perception that they have.
Yeah. Well, again, I suppose it's that whole thing of when's enough going to be enough? When are you going to look at something differently? I know as I said before, it takes a lot of courage, and we've had a lot of men tell a lot of stories about how difficult it has been to come to something like ours, but within minutes that they've walked in the door, you can see their face changes, their whole demeanour changes, they're happy that they're there, to be surrounded by like-minded people with no judgment. So in everything in life, it's how we look at it. It's our perception of stuff. So if men keep going on every day thinking the same way, that, you know, I can't talk about how I feel, you know, I can't be vulnerable, well, nothing's going to change other than what's happening to them at that time.
Yeah.
And so we talk a lot about that a lot of this moving forward is about shifting and changing the way that we process information and the way we think about things. So we have to help men realise that being vulnerable isn't weakness.
Yeah.
And to ask for help isn't weakness.
Yes.
It actually takes great courage and strength to do both.
Yeah.
So that's what I'd be saying to them, and that's what I say to them in the group. You being here takes a lot of strength.
Yes.
So that's what we promote, as well as at the same time we promote getting professional help as well.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we talk all about that, about going to a GP and getting a mental health care plan.
Yes, yeah.
And getting a referral to see a psychologist and a psychiatrist. I teach them about the difference between a psychiatrist and a psychologist.
Yeah.
And that you don't have to see someone forever, that you can go through periods of your life where you might need to see a professional for a few months and then you're okay. You might not need to see someone for a few years, but then something else comes up in your life, because that's life.
Yes.
That happens to all of us, whether we want to recognise that or not.
Yes.
That we all go through things and things come up in your life. You don't sort of go and see someone and then you're magically healed and everything's fine.
Yeah, yeah.
But as a society, that's sort of how we look at it too. You know, what have you got to worry about now? You've got food on the table, you've got a roof over your head. Why are you carrying on? Because that's life. That's what happens. That is the normal way of life, that you go through things come up. Things might come up about your past. Things might come up from a previous relationship that need to be dealt with, and you might need help.
Yes.
And so you might go and see a professional. You might have to go on medication for a little while, but that doesn't mean that you have to be on medication for the rest of your life.
Yes.
It might just help you get through a period of your life.
Yeah.
And then you don't need to be on it. So I think that's a misconception too, that people think that if they go and get help or they need to go on medication, they're failing, and that means that they'll have to be doing it forever, and that's incorrect.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot to be said about being kind and having patience with yourself, right? Because you know, I mean, all of us are like this, but men especially, you know, they kind of just want a quick fix, because I just got to get this shit out the road so I can just keep, you know, being the warrior.
The problem is that with that thought is that change takes time.
Yes. Yeah.
And learning new skills to cope with life takes time.
It does,
because we all revert back to old patterns because it's easier. It comes to us quickly. We know it.
Yes.
But my question always is, but how is that working for you?
Yes.
And of course it's not working for you, because, you know, you're you're here, or you're
Yeah,
not
that's
happy, or something's going wrong.
Yeah.
So the life skills that I teach takes time, and I explain it to everyone. It's like learning a new language. If you were learning French, you wouldn't go to 3 classes and say, oh, I haven't picked it up, so I'm going to give it away. You know that learning a new language will take a lot of time.
Yes.
And you have to be around people. If you want to speak it well, you have to be around people that speak it.
Yes.
And so it's the same with this, with learning new life skills and life lessons, that takes time. It takes time to rewire your brain. Luckily, our brains can be rewired, thank God.
Yes.
But it takes time and repetitiveness about teaching your brain new ways of thinking and new ways of getting through problems and issues. But I can say without doubt that when you are taught these new skills and you put them into practice, they are life-changing. But you can't just do them for a week and stop using them and thinking that everything's good. They're everyday life changing ways of dealing with life that you have to do. Like, people have got this misconception that, yep, I'll go to the gym, especially men, I'll go to the gym and everything's going to be fine because I'm now looking after my body. Everyone says, you know, you've got to be healthy and I'm looking after your body. No, going to the gym's fine. That's good. That's healthy. But what about the mentality of your mental health and your emotional health? That's what we are not good at as a society at talking about.
Yes.
We talk, you know, you might think about, they talk about the generalisation of meditating and mindfulness. But what does that mean in everyday life? Like, you know, a lot of people don't enjoy meditation. But me personally, it's not a favourite thing of mine.
Yes.
But so I don't do meditation, but I listen to calming music. That sits well with me.
Yes.
And there's lots of things that we have to do on a daily basis to keep ourselves self-regulated.
Yes.
And if you haven't been taught that, plus you throw in stuff from your past trauma that hasn't been dealt with as well, it's no wonder that people are walking around with no idea what they're doing, and they would prefer to be dead than living.
Because when the pain gets so great,
that's right.
It's not always that they want to die, it's just they want the pain to end.
Exactly. And because they haven't been given the skills, they haven't been taught the skills to deal with all the pain, to deal with the deep trauma that happens in life, and the letdowns and the relationship breakups and going through financial hardships and all that really hard stuff. We're not taught, none of us are taught, let alone men. You know, this stuff isn't taught to us about how we emotionally deal with all this sort of stuff. So, you know, to me, it's a no-brainer as to why people are so suicidal, because as a society, we've not only failed men, but we're failing everyone because we don't talk about this sort of stuff. And until we have honest conversations about these sort of things and how to deal with it, rather than using drugs or alcohol or other addictions, gambling or you know, porn or anything like that, we're going to get nowhere. These conversations have to start being had in schools, in families. All those conversations about how you're coping, what's happening, you know, how are you getting through that. Even bullying, you know, like a lot of men talk about how all this started because in school they started to be bullied. The way that we deal with bullying is not good either. So we have to start being, as a society, real. I think COVID is also teaching us this, that mental health is going through the roof because of COVID, because of lack of connection and all the other financial problems that come with it as well. We have to start looking at bringing all this sort of resilience and emotional regulating into schools, and starting at a very young age of teaching young children how to deal with life on an everyday basis.
A good friend of mine, Adam, he runs a program for children over here, and he's taking it through the schools, and it's just absolutely incredible. And it's you know, for girls and boys, and you know, everything from bullying to porn to body image to amazing things. It's just and resilience. It's just incredible. And I went to one of his seminars actually, and I was thinking, I wish I had have had access to this when I was at school. I was
me
like,
too.
this is incredible, you know. And I mean, we get to learn these as we make a choice if we're going to get to learn these things along the way, right? And this is why it's so incredible that you know, provide such an amazing resource. And like if someone was feeling like suicidal, and you know, or they had friends that were feeling suicidal, and sort of how what would you sort of advice would you like say to them, like how they could maybe support their friends or reach out to them? Because you know, it's not uncommon for people when they're feeling suicidal they want help, don't want to talk to people, they close down, people won't hear from them for weeks, they don't know what's going on, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Well, like I said before, it's a double-edged sword, really. The person who's suffering, if they're not telling anyone, then it's very difficult for people to help them. Then there's the other side of the coin, that if they're talking just to friends that don't have the skills to help them, well, then the only help they're going to get is surface help, and that's realistic, because friends don't have the expertise or the you know, the professional skills to help them. So I'd be saying to the friends that if you're noticing that, you know, one of the main things that people who are not doing well do is they isolate themselves. They stop responding to texts or phone calls. They're staying at home. They make excuses as to why they can't come to the next function or next party or whatever. So if you're noticing that that's happening with a friend of yours, well, that's when you can reach out and just have the honest conversations, like, you know, I'm realising that you're not connecting, you're not coming out like you used to. What's going on? Are you okay? There's always that question of, are you okay? You can't go wrong with that comment. Are you okay? And if the person's saying I'm fine, having that conversation, like, I don't think you really are fine. How about if I just come over and we have a chat or go for a walk, or you know, I come over for a coffee. We've got to remember, as men find it very difficult often to having face-to-face conversations. Men do a lot better if they're side by side and they're doing something. It's not so confronting. So telling a mate, you know, how about, especially with COVID and everything, how about if we meet for a walk and we go for a walk, or I come over and I help you fix something, or work on the car, or get on the computer, or it's just not so daunting for them. And the conversation can sort of flow and not be so direct. So that's also helpful. Another thing that often happens when people aren't doing well is they stop with their general hygiene goes down. So if you start to see, you know, your friend with dirty hair, or they've got stains on their clothes, or you can just tell that they're not showering or whatever, that's a huge cue that you know that something's not going on. So again, the gentle conversations about it, I can just sort of tell that, you know, you're not doing, you know, really well, you're not looking great. You know, they can find things like going shopping and eating very difficult, and so go over there with a pizza. You know, bring over some shopping for them and cook for them, or because people often that are very, very depressed find those small things to do very, very difficult, you know, to make themselves a meal, to do those dishes. You know, their brain will be saying, there's dishes in the sink, go and do them. But then the depression will be saying to them, no, I can't. I just don't have the energy to do that. So I won't. So go and visit your mate. When you notice that there's things like that going on, just gently do the dishes. As you're talking to them, that can also be a good way to talk to them as you're doing the dishes, having the conversations like, and remember that we all have felt like that at some point. So not saying the things like snap out of it, or you've got it good, what are you going on about? People relate to other people's stories. So by saying, I've felt like this before too, it's really shit, you know, what can I'm here for you, I really get it, because what we want is people to talk. So you want to give them the openness and the avenue for them to get all this stuff out. Because once it's out, and it's got room for other stuff to go in. But there's no room for anything to go in unless they can talk about it. So don't block their conversations. Don't tell them about what happened to you. Maybe later you can do that, because the purpose is you want them to get all this stuff that they've been forcing down and not talking out without any judgment, or not stopping it they need to get it out before they can move forward.
Yeah.
And by you stopping the conversation, that's just putting them back again.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's funny how I know when I went through those dark times, I was cool with hygiene and having a shower and stuff like that, but there was other things that I just, like I didn't want to see people. I wasn't interested in seeing people, but when I did see people, for the most part, I put on a bit of a front. But when it got really bad, I used to just sit there like this with my sunnies on and just had nothing to say. And because I was usually so full of energy, people were like, what the fuck is going on here? You know what I mean?
So it's those things. So picking up on your friends in those things. So if someone is generally really social and bubbly and out there and they're not, they've become very reserved and they're quiet.
Yes. Yeah.
Picking up on those things too.
Yeah.
But also realising that you've got limits, that you aren't there to solve the problems because you haven't got the professional skills.
Yes. Yes.
And you might have to have those conversations, because we also see that a lot too, and it comes, a lot of men talk on the page about, I do reach out to people, but they're not there for me. But what can happen a lot is, because people are going through their own stuff,
yes,
they can be there to a point.
Yes.
But then they also say, I can't be there for all of it because I've got my own stuff. I'm going through my own stuff. And that's when the person who's going through something has got a personal responsibility themselves to go and get professional help. That it might be too much for their friends to take on.
Yes.
They've got their own stuff going on.
Yeah, yeah.
And to have, a friend ringing you constantly or every few days with this deep, hard stuff to listen to might be too much for them too.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
So we talk all about being there for your mate and always being there and ringing them and all that sort of stuff. But there's a point where the responsibility falls on the person themselves to go and get the professional help, because their friends have got a lot on their plate too.
Yes, and that's it. For myself, I was very lucky. I had a group of friends that kind of stepped in, and none of them were locally. They were all colleagues actually that I had, friends from around the world, and they all, were just amazing. But I know that, other people that I've seen going through those situations, they haven't been able to book into anywhere, it's been an 8-week wait or something like that, and it's just, I think with the whole COVID thing, the resources for that type of thing, even with Lifeline and so many other resources, and then your resource as well, it's really heightened those, so that there's so much more available now to people to be able to get that help and have someone to talk to.
That is an issue. The waiting list, especially with COVID, is an issue. That is an issue, and unfortunately, when people have, reached their darkest days, and then they do make the effort to make that call or something, and then they can't get into somewhere for a long time, that is a problem.
Yes.
But until the government puts more money into it and we've got more help and, more money's put into welfare, there's nothing much we can do. We can cry about it and we can say it's bad and we can tell the government, and that's what we're doing.
Yes.
But we can only deal with the things that we've got control of, and we can't control that. So still making that appointment, and okay, you might have to wait 3 months before you see someone. Well, then lock in support that you need for that 3 months before. Use your friends, tell your friends. Have a list of people that you can contact and talk to them and say, look, I am getting help. I'm not just sitting here saying, but it's going to be 3 months before I can see someone. And once people know that too, they're more inclined to say to themselves, well, it's 3 months. They are doing the right thing. They're going to get professional help. Let's make a plan that I'll check in with you once a week or something to see how you're doing, because that might be okay. They might be able to do once a week check-in. Whereas another friend,
a game plan
a game plan. Another friend might check in on another day. At the same time, you might choose to read a book about life skills, or a good book that you've heard, that's got, or you tune into podcasts. You start listening to podcasts as well. There is so many other things. There's NA, there's AA, they're still running during COVID. Whether it's on Zoom or whatever. These are all different avenues to help you get through that period of time before you can see a professional. But again, you have to do something about it. Someone's not going to come in, whisk you up from the chair and say, I'm going to save you.
Yes.
That's not what life's about. Life is about you doing something about it. And I know when you get depressed, that's one of the problems, that you can't do anything.
Yes.
But we always talk about doing one thing.
Yes. Yes, it is.
If you can only do one thing for the day, and if that one thing is to make a phone call, well, just do that one phone call. If it means you don't have a shower, you don't make your bed, you don't do dishes or whatever, but you make that phone call. You do that. You make that phone call. So you make a priority list of what's important, what's not important. And if something's important about you need to connect with someone because you're feeling so bad, that is the priority over everything. It doesn't matter if you don't have a shower or, that you haven't done the dishes. The priority is that you make that phone call to talk to a friend or whatever.
And I think too, it offers you that little bit of, like, if you've done, one or two things, just very simple things that sort of, but because you might have that appointment in, like 8 or 12 weeks, and it kind of builds a little bit of momentum, and you get to, if you allow yourself to celebrate those little baby steps too, it's a really cool thing. Then you can go, I might be able to just get through this,
Yes. And I always say to people, you're still here today, so you can't tell me that you haven't been through things before in your life, and you've got through them.
Yes.
Remember that. Remember what you've done and what you've had to do to get through things.
Yes.
You can do this. This is just another hurdle in your life that you will learn from it.
Yes.
And you will get through it, and you will then be a survivor, and you can teach people and talk about your story. And as we've just said today, that when you hear other people's stories, it's one of the most powerful things in this world to hear.
It is, Oh, this is so good. Oh, as I said, I could keep talking to you for ages. I know you've got an appointment.
Yes, I do. I have another appointment at 3. So
so we need to get going. But I just want to thank you so much for today. It's been absolutely brilliant, and just
no problem.
full of gold. And I can't wait for people to hear this.
Yep, it's been great, Mandy. Thanks. Nice talking to you.
No worries. I'll put all the links in the post so people know how to get hold of you.
Okay, thanks, Mandy.
Okay, big hugs. Thank you.
Yeah, you too. Bye.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Hey, beautiful man. If you're going through stress, need insight, direction to lighten the load, brother, and support during these challenging times, reach out to me. It's no secret that there are so many men suffering at the moment, amazing men, and they're so keen to get help, but don't know what that looks like. So I've created a 6-week one-to-one resilience coaching package for men with one-to-one coaching calls and support via Facebook Messenger and WhatsApp in between calls to help put yourself back in the driver's seat of life. And there's a strong level of trust that goes hand in hand with walking by someone's side during their challenges and their celebrations too. And that's what I'm here for, brother. So message me and let's find your path to true resilience.